This is the story of Naomi and Ruth. Now, Naomi lived in Bethlehem with her husband Elimelech. Nice glasses, Naomi. Anyway, there was a famine in the land, so they decided to go and live in the country of Moab for a while. Now, they had two sons, Malian and Kilian, and they both married local girls from Moab, Ruth and Orpah. While in Moab, Naomi's husband died, and 10 years later, both of her sons died as well, leaving her alone with her two daughters-in-law. Now, Naomi heard that the climate change thing had sorted itself out, so she decided to go back to Judah. She told her two daughters-in-law that they should go back to their old families. There was lots of crying and hugging and girl stuff. Naomi said, "May the Lord show you kindness, as you have showed kindness to your dead husbands and to me." But Ruth refused to leave. She said, "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." When they got back to Bethlehem, the village people said, "Could this be Naomi?" And Naomi and Ruth were welcomed back. Now, Naomi and Ruth needed food, so Ruth would go and glean barley from one of the fields. It just so happened that this field belonged to a man called Boaz. Boaz told Ruth to only glean from his fields, because she would be safe there. Ruth told Naomi about Boaz, and Naomi said, "May the Lord bless him. This man is a close relative, a kinsman redeemer." Naomi wanted to find a home for Ruth, somewhere where she'd be well provided for. She told her to go and sleep at Boaz's feet, and she gave her some instructions of what to say. Boaz woke up, and Ruth said to him, "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are my kinsman redeemer," which meant, "Will you marry me?" Boaz said, "Yes, I am your kinsman redeemer, but there is another relative that is more closely related to you. If he wants to redeem you, then good. But if he is not willing to do so, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it." Ruth was wondering what was going to happen, and she was also wondering why there were snowflakes on the screen behind her. She had this feeling that maybe she was in the wrong stop-motion video. Maybe she should just let that go. Okay, we on? That's great. I can't guarantee that all those things in that video are biblically accurate, but I just hope that you bear with me. Now, if you were here last week, you would have seen what happened after that. You would have seen that Boaz went to the town gates. And when he got to the town gates, he found the other kinsman redeemer. And they had a conversation about who would redeem Naomi. And because he was the first kinsman redeemer, he had first option on the land. And he thought, well, that'll be good. I'll buy this land because I'm going to make some money out of this. But when he discovered that if he bought the land, he also had to marry Ruth, that made it different. Because he realized that would cost him money. He would spend money on the land, and everything will go to Ruth's descendants, not his own descendants. So then we come to the stage now where where the first kinsman redeemer passes his sandal across to Boaz and says, "You buy the land." And what we're looking at is, what is this meaning of this sandal? Because it's a very strange custom. Now, let's read the first verse there, verse 7. "Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal, gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions." Now, when you look at that verse, basically you think, oh, what's going on? They must be just going to like the marketplace, and if they want to sell some land, they agree on terms, and when they agree, they take off their sandal, pass it on, and buy the land. So the sandal is treated like a handshake. That's what it seems to be. And that's what most people would think that verse means when they first look at it. And that's what actually most commentaries seem to run with if they actually don't look into it. But there's another meaning behind this verse that we miss. Oh, I've got to push the button. Is that working? Is it dead, is it? Can you move it? Sorry, just bear with us for a minute. We've had a few technical things happening. I've got some of the stuff here, actually. Sometimes when we read a translation in the Bible, sometimes it's a bit ambiguous. If you look at the Catholic Church and how they treat Mary and how we treat Mary, it's because they treat the Bible differently. If you look at the Catholic Church and you see how they treat the popes as coming from Peter, they treat it differently. And this verse is an example of how we sometimes lose things in translation. It's happened a long time ago, and the originals in Hebrew, it means something to those people at that time. They knew what it meant. But when it comes to us and we try and translate it, it's hard to understand. We good? Good. Okay, so if you look at that top verse there, verse 7, this is a way that this verse is translated. To make a sale legal in those days, one person would take off his sandal and give it to the other. Now, does that sound good? It does. It sounds great. It sounds like what the verse is saying. But there's a nuance in here that we're missing. Can we go to the next slide? Good. Okay. Now, the term in this verse is for the transfer, redemption and transfer of property. And we've got two sides, A and B. Now, in this story, we know that the first Redeemer had a right to buy the property, and he was the first guy that had dibs on it. There was no one else that could buy it. So he chose not to buy it, and then he gave his sandals to Boaz, and Boaz was then the person that had dibs on buying the land. So this verse is really not about buying land, it's about transferring responsibility. So the sandal is involved in the transferring of the responsibility, not the buying of the land. If, for example, I went to the city gates and wanted to buy some land off another person, I would just buy it. There's no sandal exchanging because you don't have to find out who has the right to redeem it first. When you go back to side A, someone has a right to redeem it. If you're passing on that right to redeem it, you pass on your sandal. If you go to side B, if you want to buy the property, you don't have to see who has the right to buy it. The sandal bit is not on side B, the sandal bit is on side A. Can you see that? I'm glad you can because it's really, really difficult to explain. And if you were going to go, I'd just be hopeless. Can we go to the next one? Okay, so the question is, why do we use a sandal? I mean, there must be some significance in this because these are Hebrews. When you use something, there's a significance. Now, basically, the sandal is really at the handshake. You agree. You have some terms, you agree, and then it goes. So this is what the sandal's really acting as. Can we go to the next one? Now, there's a verse in the Old Testament that tells us about this. And it's about an institution called Levite marriage. And this is a type of marriage in which the brother of a deceased man is obliged to marry his brother's widow. Now, the first part I've just grayed out. That just explains that part of it. But the second part I've got there tells us what happens if you don't do that obligation. And we'll read that. However, if a man does not want to marry his brother's wife, She shall go to the elders at the town gate and say, my husband's brother refuses to carry on my brother's name in Israel. He will not fulfill his duty of a brother-in-law to me. Then the elders of the town shall summons him and talk to him. If he persists in saying, I do not want to marry her, his brother's widow shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, take off one of his sandals, spit in his face, and say, this is what is done to the man who will not build up his brother's family line. That man's line shall be known in Israel as the family of the unsandaled. So this is a disgraceful thing. The guy is meant to provide a child for the widow, and he doesn't do it for whatever reason. So they go down to the elders at the gate, discuss this matter. The elders speak to the chap about it. He still doesn't want to do it. So we have this ceremony, a little ceremony, where he takes off his sandal and the widow can spit in his face. Now, the reason she spits in his face is because no one has now provided a way of her to have children. Now, think back to Boaz and the first Redeemer. The same thing's happening here. He has got the first opportunity to buy the land from Naomi. He refuses to do it from his own selfish motives, because he's going to lose money. So he passes on the sandal, which is a shameful thing. But in this case, Boaz takes over the redemption. So there is still going to be redemption. So there's no spitting, which is good because you don't want spitting in sandals. So can you see where this is coming from? What we thought was a custom where you just swap sandals every time you want to buy something is not about that. It's a custom of about who's going to have the authority to buy the land. Does that make sense? I'm glad it does. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Actually, you can jump two, actually. Jump two, and we'll get there quicker. See if you can get the picture of George Bush. Next one. Okay, so what's the symbolism behind the sandal? The symbolism is a symbolism of shame. Now, you might remember this back in 2018 in Iraq. One of the reporters there had a bit of an issue with George Bush, called him a dog, whipped off his shoe and biffed it at him. Because he is saying, what you have done here is shameful. And George Bush, like a little rabbit, ducked out of the way, and you saw the look on his face. Not that it was surprising. The look was, why did he throw a sandal at me? I mean, if you could do this in America and do it properly, you just get shot. That's how you do it. But over here, no, they biff sandals at you. If you're Simon Rusty, they come up to you and stab you in the eye and do it properly, but not here. So this is the thing. You need to understand what the sandal means. And the sandal means shame. In the old days, slaves had no shoes. Masters had shoes. Lower, higher. Okay? So that's the bit of the idea. And if you look at some of even the parables in the Bible, if you look at the parable of the lost son, remember he went away, wasted away his life, was actually lower than a servant because he was eating pig food, and he comes back thinking maybe I can go and stay with my father, at least I'll be treated like a servant, I'll be treated better than what I was. When he comes back, he has no shoes. It's a sign of disgrace. And what did the father say? Put a robe on his back, put sandals on his feet, and a ring on his finger, restoring him. No sandals, low, shame. Sandals, lifted up. Can you see that? So this is what's happening in this little thing that the no-name Redeemer and Boaz are doing. There's a bit of shame involved. And even in the text, when we read the text, we can see the reason he doesn't want to redeem the land is because of his own interest and the money he's going to lose. I've got a few more verses there that just support that idea of the sandal being shamed. Obviously, the one we just read in Deuteronomy 25, where that person is greatly shamed because he wasn't carrying out his obligation. But even if you look at something like the verse in John 1:27, where John the Baptist says, "He is the one who comes after me. The straps of his sandals I am not worthy to untie." To untie sandals was a menial thing, like a slave would do that. And here John the Baptist is saying, I'm even way back further than that, because Jesus is so much further than me. So this idea of having sandals and the use of sandals is very, very vivid imagery when you look at Hebrew law. Let's go to the next one. Should be verse 9, I hope. Oh, on top of it. So then Boaz announces to all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Malion. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Malion's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with the property, so that his name will not disappear from his family or hometown. And today you are witnesses." Notice how publicly this is done. It's done very publicly. And I suspect that Boaz is very happy about it because he's got a wife. And he's got a good one. Next one, please. If we go to Proverbs, we can see in Proverbs 31, "A wife of noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her, and she lacks nothing. She brings him good, not harm. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Honor her for all that her hands have done, and let her bring her works of praise to the city gate." Notice the mention of a city gate. This is where people can see who she is. And we know that Ruth is a person of honor, because in Ruth 3:11, "All the people of my town know that you are a noble woman of character." What a great sort of woman to have. Now, I looked at pictures, because I like pictures. I thought, I'll put some pictures up of Ruth and we'll tell the story. Every picture I find of Ruth, she's drop dead gorgeous. You know, and she is like pouncing around the barley fields and slightly undressed and letting herself be known. And that's how people treat this. But this is not what's happening. I mean, Ruth could be pig, dog, ugly. It does not matter. The thing that matters is she is a noble woman of worth. And this verse in Proverbs is saying, charm can be deceptive. Beauty can be fleeting. Okay? We're not looking at, if you want to find a decent woman, you need to be looking for someone who's noble and has great character. That's what you need to be looking for. Now, this is interesting because all through the story, we are not told that Ruth loves Boaz. She doesn't, it's none of this, "Oh, Boaz, you're so cute. Oh, I wish you'd come and, none of that. And the same with Boaz. And the reason for that is because God doesn't love us that way. The writer is very careful to show that there's great respect, not for what they look like, not because she's young, but because who she is. And that's the reason God loves us as well. Now, many years ago, I don't know, maybe a couple of years before COVID. Actually, I will just go backwards there and reel up, change subject. When I think of Ruth, I think of the conversation she must have had with Naomi. To make Ruth such a wonderful person, I'm wondering what Naomi was like, what she did to Ruth to make that person. And I'll just go back now to my illustration, sorry. I've gone off notes here. So a couple of years before we were in COVID, my wife and I were in New Zealand, and we were in a shop together, just looking around. My wife was somewhere and I was somewhere else. And a lady came up she must have been about 40 or so, and she came up to me and looked at me and said, "Hello, Dean." And I had no idea who she was because we'd been away 20 years. And when you realise, okay, you minus 20, what would you look like? And I was trying to work out in my head who she was. And I said, "Oh, hello, Jacinta." I don't know why I'm going silly over this, but Jacinta, I saw Jacinta. Now, Jacinta was a girl that we knew years ago, and my wife had spent lots of time with her when she was young, and my wife had spoken into her life, and she had told her how to when you're going out with a guy, what you should and shouldn't do, what boundaries you should have, where you should be putting God in your life. And she had sown all this into Jacinta. And then 20 years later, we meet her. And she talked to us. And you could just tell she wanted to say something to us. She said how she was going. She was married now with 3 kids. And she said, I want to thank you. And she's talking to Sue here, not me. I want to thank you for all the things you did and sowed into my life. All those principles you gave me when I was 16, 17, 18, I have applied them in my life. And I applied them to my husband, and I'm applying them now to my children. And what a wonderful, wonderful thing. And Sue and I, we went away. We thought, wow, look at Jacinta. What a wonderful woman she's become. And we'd not seen her for 20 years. It was just a really nice moment. And when I look at this story, I see the same thing happening. Naomi must have been a fantastic woman because she was able to speak into Ruth's life. And Ruth, had those words that she said, wherever you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. It was a permanent thing. She didn't say, I'll go where you go, and when everything finishes, then I'll go back to Moab. No, that was it. She's cut off. She is now worshipping the God of Israel, Naomi's God, and she's full into it, and off she goes. And I think that's a powerful thing. And I just say to anyone that has anything to do with other people, like in youth church and children, you're actually speaking into their life. And what you're saying to them now is going to bear fruit later on. That's a wonderful thing. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is Moab. I'm just putting this into just to let you know, if you hadn't noticed all the way through the text, this idea of Ruth the Moabitess keeps getting chucked in our face. She gets introduced as Ruth the Moabitess, and you think they could just leave it alone after that. But no, it's Ruth the Moabitess. And Ruth comes from Moab. Ruth the Moabitess. Because that's a very shameful thing to do, to become from Moab. You go to the next one. In the family tree there you can see where Ruth actually comes from. Start at Terah, go down to Hanan, down to Lot, daughter 1, Moabites. If you know the story, can we flick to the next one? If you know the story of Lot and his daughters, Lot left Sodom and Gomorrah with his daughters. His wife had a problem with salt. Maybe she had a bit too much of it, I'm not sure. And they went away, found a nice cave to live in, and the daughters were worried that there were no men around. How are we going to get children? We need lineage. And they got their father drunk and had sex with him, and that's where their children came from. Ruth comes from incest. Wrong one, just as bad. So Ruth comes from incest and lives in Moab. So this whole idea that Ruth is bad is always pushed in her face. But because of her faithfulness, because she's actually turned to God and loves God so vehemently, she is now accepted in. So someone who is seen as evil and bad is welcomed in. Now, you need to go back probably to remember, there's 2 things that you need to remember. At the time of Abraham, Abraham had a covenant with God. It was an unconditional covenant that Israel will be given lineage and be given land. So this is why it's so important in this whole story all the way through that the people can have offspring and that the people can have land. We start the story with Naomi having nothing. Everything goes wrong, works its way through, and then at the end we see that those 2 problems are solved. She now has land again because she's been redeemed, and she now has lineage because her daughter-in-law Ruth is going to have a child. And it's a lovely picture. We sort of left at the end of Ruth with this idea that Naomi is sitting there with this grandchild that's going to be her new hope for the future. And the people of the village are saying, we know it's Ruth's child, but really, you've got a child now. It's your future. And she doesn't know what the future's going to hold. But then we get some clues, don't we? Because we see where that lineage goes. It goes right through to King David. And then by implication, it goes right through to Joseph, who is the husband of Mary, who Jesus was born to. So that's a very important thing. Let's go to, I think there's some text next. There should be, John. The next part, verse 11. This is the blessing. Now, there's been quite a few blessings in the book, and this is a blessing. You can just look at it as we go, because we've read it already. But I want you to notice two things. First one is the language changes. May the Lord bless you. The Lord. This is the Lord. This is the Lord when he appeared to Moses at a burning bush. It's Yahweh. It's YHWH. It's a tetragram. That's the new word. And this was a conditional covenant. When you see this word, just think that this is the covenant God had made. He controls everything. But you've got to follow his laws. If you don't follow his laws, things go bad. So this, when they say that name, it's Yahweh. May Yahweh bless you. Now this verse is typical of Hebrew parallelism, where they like to say things twice for effect. Let's have a look in the bottom part of verse 11. It says, may you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bellbowrie. No, it says Bethlehem, doesn't it? But you could say, may you have standing in Mogul and be famous in Bellbowrie. Because what it's saying is Ephrathah is actually the area around Bethlehem. So it's saying the area of Bethlehem and around. And so it's sort of said twice. And then you've got the blessing of may your family be like Rachel and Leah, and may your family be like Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. And we'll just look at that. We're doing family trees here. Just so you know where we are, you've probably read the Old Testament years ago and forget where we are. Up the top we've got Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah, and you can see Jacob right in the middle. So this is the blessing. May your family be like Leah and Rachel. So they are the two wives of Jacob, and they make up the 12 tribes of Israel, with a little help from a couple of concubines, mind you. And you can see there that this is a great blessing, because they're saying, may your family be like the whole of Israel. That's a great blessing. And then it says, may you also be like Perez, whom was born from Tamar. Now the interesting thing here, Judah and Tamar have a child, Perez, but Tamar is not Judah's wife. Tamar is Judah's son's wife. Judah had 3 sons. The first one was evil, and the Lord took him. And he was married to Tamar. So she had to be redeemed. So she went to the second son. He was evil too and was taken. So she had to be redeemed again. She couldn't go to the third son. The third son was too young. So Judah said, well, bring her back to the house. And when he grows up, then you can marry together and have a child. But this never happened. When he grew up, nothing happened. So Tamar, just go to the next one. So Tamar dressed up as a prostitute, and she tricked Judah into having a relationship with her. And then when Judah found out that he'd had this relationship, he said, well, we're going to stone you and kill you. But Tamar, during this relationship, had managed to get his staff and his ring, and said, I'm pregnant by the person who owns this staff and ring. And then Judah realized, you're pregnant by me, I can't stone you. You can't be killed. And then the idea is he realized that she was more righteous than him, because he should have made sure that she got children through the last son, but he didn't. And she went to all this bother to get this done. So when people are giving this blessing at the end, this is not missed on them. They know this story. So not only are they blessing her, but they're saying, and we acknowledge that you had to be redeemed, just like this person. And her, Tamar's son was Perez and Zerah, whatever his name is, and they replaced the sons that the Lord took from Judah. And when you look at the story further on, Boaz is a descendant of Perez. So it all just ties together. So this is a great blessing. Now, I know this has been a bit of a world war thing, and we're looking in at small things. Go to the last one. We're looking in at small things, but I'm hoping that where we read this, you're looking at the big things as well. And just seeing how this applies to us. Because Boaz redeemed Ruth, God redeems us. And there's all these themes just going round in there, and you should always be thinking of them as we look at them. Themes of redemption and God's providence. Look how God had looked after Naomi in the end. What looked really bad, he actually provided lineage for her. God loving us for who we are, not where we come from. Look at Ruth. She came out of Moab, where there was incest in the back of her history. She was not loved, but she was a righteous and noble woman, so she was loved. The kindness and loyalty we can see between Naomi and Ruth, that's obvious. God's mercy, how he made everything, put everything together. God's provision, it all just goes together and works its way through. God's working behind the scenes to make things happen. Obedience, faithfulness, future blessings were to come, extra children. So these are wonderful things. I think I'll close there and pray, and I hope that you ponder on this message today. Thank you, Lord Jesus. We thank you that you love us. You give us these stories that we can see other people's troubles, and we can then see our troubles. You work them out for us through history. Lord, we just pray that you would watch over us and help us to be people that speak into other people's lives. Help us to be people of noble character and godly people. We just put this to you today, Father, and ask that you bless us. Amen. Rest of it? No. Just wait, there's another video. Yep. In those days, if you wanted to get anything legal done, you do it at the town gate with all the elders watching. Boaz found the kinsman redeemer that he'd been speaking about and said to him, "Did you know that Naomi is selling the land belonging to Elimelech? You are first in line to redeem it, but if you don't want to redeem it, then I will do it." "I will buy the land," he said. Boaz said, "If you buy the land, you must also marry Ruth the Moabitess, in order to maintain the name of the dead with the property." The first kinsman redeemer said, "Then I cannot do it, because I already have a family." "You do it." In those days, some people would wear plasticine on their feet. It was a bit weird, but let's not go there. When they made a transaction, they would take the plasticine off and give it to the other person. Boaz said, "With this plasticine, I redeem the property belonging to Naomi, and I take Ruth to be my wife. You are all witnesses." Boaz and Ruth got married, but they couldn't have George Michael singing Careless Whisper, because this story happened thousands of years ago. Boaz and Ruth had a son, and they called him Obed. Now Naomi would sit with him, and she would care for him. The women of the village said, "Now Naomi has a son, so I guess it worked out pretty good after all." "They are nice glasses, Naomi. Did you get them from Specsavers?"